Welcome to Kubernauts.
I'm Songyeon.
And I'm Rebecca. Kubernauts is a podcast series introducing the field of cybernetics and control theory.
With our guest speakers, we'll take you on a voyage to explore a broad range of applications of the fields in the real world.
Sound complicated? Well, all we need is your curiosity. Stay tuned!
Today, we have the pleasure of having Professor Ian Petersen.
Professor Ian Petersen is from the School of Engineering at the Australian National University.
Thank you, Ian, for taking the time to meet with us today.
My pleasure.
So we would like to have a chat about control theory.
Sure.
And we are aware that control theory may sound quite abstract to many people. So what is control theory in a nutshell?
Okay, so control theory is about controlling things. And in particular, about the engineering design of feedback control systems, where we've got some piece of equipment we control engineers often call a plant that we'd like to control in some way. We'd like to make it do what we want to do. So typically the way we do this is we use feedback, which means that we might have some devices we call sensors that make some measurements of some aspect of our plant. We've got some other devices called actuators that can actually change the plant. And then we've got some way of taking those that information, those signals from those sensors, processing it, maybe in a computer, maybe in some electronics, getting some new signals, feeding those into those actuators, and then controlling the system. And this is like a feedback interconnection. It's a loop where we've got information from the plant, go to the sensors, to the controller, to the actuators, and then back to the plant. And then control theory and control engineering is about designing that system, in particular the control part of it, the software on the computer or the way we construct the electronics to make our system behave how we want it so that it controls the plant to do what we want to do. And maybe that's like controlling the temperature in your house. You've got an air conditioner or a heater. You've got sensors. It might be a thermostat or something that measures the temperature. You've got some software on the thermostat that calculates what we should do with a given temperature reading and then adjusts the output of our heater to accordingly. So that's a very simple control system, but we've got control systems, say, in a car. We've got, for example, adaptive cruise control, where we try and control the speed of your car in such a way that you don't crash into the car in front of you, but you go along at a nice steady speed. Or we might control an aircraft. We want the aircraft to fly smoothly, not to crash, but to fly along, say, at a constant speed. So all those things involve designing control systems, and that's what control theorists and control engineers will do.
Oh, interesting. But you kept mentioning about plant. What is this plant actually?
So that's just the thing that we want to control. So, for example, in your home heating system, it's actually your whole house. You're trying to control the temperature in your house. So we think of that as the thing that you're trying to control. That the control engineer typically doesn't design that. Somebody else has designed the house. He's just designing, or she is just designing the control, the air conditioning system to make the temperature a nice temperature. Or if it's the cruise control in your car, then the plant is just the car.
Oh, interesting. So how did you get interested in control theory?
I guess it started when I was an undergraduate student studying electrical engineering. That I did some courses in control systems, and they were really good lecturers, and I got really interested in the subject. I was always pretty sort of mathematically inclined, so that attracted me, and it seemed like an interesting area to get interested in. Then when it came for me to think about studying for a PhD, then I put down control systems as one of the areas that I thought I'd be most interested in.
Okay. So it seems like to actually study control theory, you have to be good in math.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, that's why it's called control theory. It's about theory, and there's a lots of modeling and optimization and different mathematical ideas go into control theory. So I'd say most people who do control theory are kind of interested in the sort of mathematical side of engineering.
Right. Yeah, excellent. Could you then tell us a little bit about the research that you are working on?
Yeah, I guess I've worked in lots of different aspects of control theory in terms of my research over the years. One of them has been robust control theory, where we're trying to make our control system so that it'll work even if our plant is changing. For example, if we're looking at a car and we say we're controlling the braking system, we want the brakes to work whether the road's a smooth road on a sunny day or whether it's very wet and icy or it's rainy. All of those will change the behavior of our plant, but we want the one control system to keep working in all those conditions. So that's called robust control. Another area I've worked in is what's called optimal control, which is related to optimization. It's basically you want your control system to be the best possible control system. So, for example, you want the smoothest possible ride in your car, you want the safest possible ride in your aircraft, or you want your heating control to give the most comfortable temperature. So that's another area I've worked in. And then another area is quantum control, where this is kind of an out there part of control theory. Most of the examples I talked about, then the laws of classical physics like Newton's laws could be used to model those systems, whereas quantum control theory, we're trying to control things that you have to use quantum mechanics to describe. So these are things like atoms controlling individual atoms or photons controlling individual photons. So this area started to become very important because of advances in quantum physics and in particular things like quantum computing. Another area that I've been interested in is really part of robust control, but a particular kind of robust control that I've been interested in is what we call negative imaginary systems theory, which is to do with controlling mechanical structures like flexible structures, for example, large space structures you might want to control to try and get rid of any vibrations in these structures. And so it turns out that this negative imaginary systems theory was kind of a useful theory that could let you to just damp out these vibrations in a very robust way, that it didn't really matter what the actual dynamics of the structure was, as long as it satisfied some sort of well-known physical laws like conservation of energy, then you would have this negative imaginary property, and we could use that to design a robust control system. So they're kind of the main areas that I'm currently working on or have worked on over the years.
Oh, okay. So this negative imaginary system, where can we actually see them? Like, is it implemented in the real world as a controller, anything part like that?
As I said, in these sort of large space structures that I guess in the 80s, there was this so-called Star Wars project where they were trying to build these large structures in space, these ideas came into play. In particular, if you think of a mechanical system like made of collections of masses and if you like springs connecting together these masses, that if you apply a force to such a system and then measure the corresponding change in position of the masses, turns out that always has this negative imaginary property. So that you can sort of exploit to damp the oscillations in this negative imaginary systems in these sort of, say, large space structures. But it doesn't necessarily have to be a large space structure. It could be something actually at a very small level. It's almost like at a nanoscale level. Another area I've looked at was controlling what's called atomic force microscopes. They're kind of microscopes that can measure or image tiny samples, even down to an atomic level. It involves essentially tapping them with a very small flexible tip. So it's a flexible structure at a micro or nanoscale, and you still need a control system to make this microscope work. And the same ideas that are worked on the large space structures also work at this like very small nanoscale in terms of getting rid of the vibrations, which would give you a very poor quality image if the tip was vibrating in the wrong way. So you try and control it to damp out those vibrations.
Wow, that sounds pretty cool, actually. So you mentioned that you also work on quantum control stuff.
Yes, sure.
So, you mentioned quantum computers. So it's something that we see in news and articles and stuff. So can you actually give us some insight? What will quantum computers actually be doing in our everyday life?
Right. So quantum computers is still something which is like an experimental area of science and engineering. But now big computing companies like Google and Microsoft, IBM have started building experimental quantum computers which can solve very small computing problems, but the idea is that, at least in theory, these could be scaled up to very big quantum computers, which would be able to solve computing problems that hadn't been able to be solved before, like dealing with very large-scale databases, sorting information on a very large scale. So that might be then applicable to artificial intelligence. I guess one of the motivations for quantum computing was to actually be able to crack codes, so that governments were interested in this, that at least theoretically, that scientists said, well, a quantum computer would be able to do things much faster than a classical computer, including cracking codes. So far, it's nowhere near to the stage of actually being able to crack codes, but the physics says that these computers, if you could build them big enough and accurately enough, that they would be able to do this. So at the moment, there's a lot of engineering effort to try and make these quantum computers actually work at the scale that they can solve useful problems. But that's where we think that quantum control might be useful, as well as enabling these more practical quantum computers to be built. But still, it's very early days, and as yet, it's not really clear whether, even if it's possible to build a quantum computer which would actually be more useful than our current computers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing your insights in control theory. Also touching on quantum computers. So after our conversation, I got super interested in control theory. So before we let you go, would you share a word with control theory enthusiasts like me?
Okay, so I guess I've been a control theory enthusiast for my whole career. And as we said before, what attracted me is the kind of mathematical nature of it, combined with its very real applications. And so in our discussion, we've talked about some of the areas that I've been interested in, but there's a whole range of different areas that other control theory researchers are interested in. For example, biological and biomedical applications is a very large area. People are trying to understand biology by thinking about feedback feedback systems that occur naturally in, say, large-scale biological systems, like at sort of the level of the Earth, or small-scale biological systems, such as within the human body, for example, controlling blood sugar levels via the pancreas, and even looking at designing artificial control systems to use when those natural systems within the human body break down. For example, in diabetes, then some control engineers are looking at replacing the natural feedback systems in the body by artificial feedback systems with sensors and actuators and computers to take over the role of the pancreas if it's not working properly, leading to diabetes. So another thing people are looking at is large-scale systems like multi-agent systems, things like drones, like whole networks of drones flying in formation, for example. There's lots of control systems theory looking at that. Social networks is another area that a lot of control systems researchers have looked at, trying to understand the dynamic behavior of large interconnections of people who have different social opinions, that you can also apply control theory to that and try and analyze how those sort of sociological issues might evolve.
Wow. I've never thought that control theory is applied in such a broad scope of life and engineering. So thank you so much.
Yes, that's really fruitful. Thank you so much for your time today.
Okay, thanks, guys. My pleasure.